It's already saying time is up. Which is true. Anyway, thanks, guys. I really appreciate this opportunity. I think it's not easy to moderate a panel with this kind of accomplished individuals, each of them in their own right. But I've been given this job, so I'll try my best. So to start off, I think there was a recent Bain report, if you look at it, which said that the India VC ecosystem is going to be about 43 billion, and healthcare is going to be 80% of that. I don't know how true it is, but that's a report. 80%. Okay. Maybe it's okay. There is going to be a lot of opportunities in healthcare. I don't know if that means 80%, but there's a lot of opportunities in healthcare in the India ecosystem, right?
If that needs to happen, BFSI should shut down.
Yeah, right. So they're saying it's a $30 billion opportunity. That's what they say, right? Especially SaaS, healthcare, FICI digital, and many of those areas, right? And I think I also run a fund, but we have stayed away from healthcare because we don't have the expertise. But we have experts here. I think, in particular, I know Rohit used to run Cloud9 hospitals, and you know Cloud9, right? And we have Naganand, who runs Idea Spring, and a Deeptech investor, very successful in his own right. And I'm forgetting the name, sorry. Karuna, I think she runs an impact fund, if I'm right, or a regular fund, yeah. But with having said that, I think I said this in the morning, the big elephant in the room is always AI, right? Everybody is talking about AI, and where is AI going to play a role in the healthcare space? So I would like to start with that premise, and maybe Naga, you can chime in and talk about where do you think AI is going to lead us in the healthcare space?
I wish I knew, is the honest answer. But look, I think AI is everywhere and nowhere kind of a thing, right? So everybody has to talk about it, but when it comes to actually translating into something that's predictable, there are a lot of questions. It's like, I was just reading an article in The Economist that said investments in AI has contributed to 40% US GDP this year. And that says something, right? Yeah. Because it's the crazy amounts of investment have gone, but how it's going to evolve and where it's going to evolve, I think time will tell. Whether in the current form, large LLMs, or it will be small LLMs, in what areas of application, in healthcare or in any other area, what's the training that's required, what kind of inferencing can you get, what kind of data is required. Even, for example, in health, if it has to give me any meaningful input, it has to have enough data about me, right? So are you carrying some ring or something? How many people are using those rings?
Yeah.
What percentage? Like if you say suddenly that you want to go to tier 3 cities and then provide this as an app or some other capability, question is where is the data for that particular person, because it's very individualistic. I don't, for example, AI will not work on me because I don't wear anything. It has no data on me, right? Yeah. So I think the number one criteria hence is in healthcare particularly, how much data it is on you, and then how it is applicable to the segment where it is doing. Like what happens in the US, demography will not apply in India. So data training has to happen here. I think India is probably best positioned to utilize that, if you can aggregate all the data. So, but that said, I think AI has the most promise amongst all the new technologies that I have tracked for the past 30 years, right? You had RFID that came and went. You had Web3 that came and went. You had blockchain that came, didn't take off. Now we'll see where it goes. But compared to all this technology, I think there's a lot of promise, but it's very hard to predict where it's going to go, how it will be transform things. There's promise, but how that promise translates to something, we'll wait and watch.
Yeah, I think there is more hype. I don't know if it's overhyped or underhyped, but AI is really hyped, right?
No, it is, like any technology we have seen, right, Venk, has always gone through that curve, right?
Yeah.
Where it is a hype curve, right? It goes up. I think you are at the peak. It will definitely drop in the next year or two, and then it will come and settle down at a point where it's actually making meaningful, giving meaningful outcomes. Because I'll give you an example of what happened in an enterprise sale. One of our startups working on AI is trying to sell. We go sell this product to the enterprise. The question that came up in that enterprise was, prove that your product doesn't have any bias. Okay, before you deploy the product in the enterprise, please prove to me it doesn't have any bias. How the hell you will prove that there's no bias, right? So I think we'll have to go through a lot of those questions.
No, I agree with you. Rohit, you have been an operator. You have run Cloud9, right? Can you think of a scenario, even within Cloud9, where you would use AI, right? Today, as in people talk about agentic AI, a lot. Do you see an opportunity to use AI in Cloud9?
Yes, thanks, Venk. Good evening, everyone. Happy to be here. So, look, I think two things before I come to the specific question on where will Cloud9 use this. I think one on AI in itself, right? I think all of us are happy to use every new thing which comes about, nano banana to everything, right? We want to try the next new thing. When it comes to health, right, the burden of proof is the most essential. And that becomes super complicated when it comes to healthcare, because it's not you or me or the device telling you or the information which is coming out. It's the physician layer which becomes extremely important in terms of how this information is interpreted, and then the care prognosis starts, right? So it's for anyone building in AI out there, I think this is the most critical sort of step to take and also overcome. A lot of people, especially using AI, nowadays, honestly, just sort of humor, I asked an entrepreneur, what is AI in this? And he told me, look, we didn't get a .com, so .ai was available. I'm like, okay, at least you're honest about it, right? So, but the thing is, even validation, for example, right? Like in AI, in most cases, a lot of validation which is used as a consumer spread product, we all contribute, right? Like how ChatGPT came up with all this. So they said, we are learning. They said how every comma, every please, sorry, thanks is hurting them, right? From a server usage. Again, you can't do that in healthcare, right? So in healthcare, one, you need the clinical validation, and people think that we've won as soon as you got the clinical validation. The most important is peer review. Again, because of the physician layer involved in the distribution of this, right? So the peer review is very hard to, again, generally assume that you'll get it. It's very difficult. Even in, established ecosystems like the US, it takes its own time.
Sure.
But where it actually is useful, and coming to the side of what Cloud9 also kind of uses it, is everything which is conversational, everything which is non-clinical workflow are easier to kind of get into, right? Wherever they were like human agentic flows, it's easier to kind of replace with some of those. Wherever there was a lot of information flow, like Vikalp is here, he's actually going to talk about it next. How can you actually improve turnaround time on a lot of these things? How can you possibly increase transparency, remove information asymmetry? These are things which you can do. Are people going to pay for it? That's a different question. But the ability to kind of use it in situations where you are improving access to information and helping them manage queries, helping them find solutions to what they want. Non-clinical nature is the first one which gets solved for. Again, healthcare, as I need not tell everyone in this room, works in layers. So AI works beautifully in layers where a lot of backend ops, a lot of information crunching, a lot of disparate pieces of information that you can bring together and make sense actively and very fast works well. So that works whether it's healthcare or otherwise, right? But to actually come in and make meaningful sense for doctors from a scribing point of view works well. And I like to coin AI in healthcare as assisted intelligence rather than artificial intelligence, because at least to our doctors, when we talk about AI, the first thing they do is to dismiss it, right? Saying they cannot take our jobs. No one's coming after their jobs, but it is what it is. Yeah.
No, but the reason I asked you that question is, I read an interesting article which said there was somebody who the physician couldn't diagnose 17 times, what he had, what problem he had. But AI did it in one first shot, and it figured out what his problem is, right?
Sure.
So I'm saying, I think it's anybody's guess. I think things will happen, right? India is a very good test bed, especially with the data. We have so much data to accumulate, right?
Yeah, but data, if it is structured, it's then more amenable.
Yeah,
right?
I agree with
India
you. Both
is
structured.
still very unstructured data.
Yeah.
Most of the physicians still prefer writing on piece of paper than putting information digitally. So it's not as easy to kind of get that information, right? Like just the interoperability that we were speaking across. from, if you take the life cycle of a patient, right, from diagnosis to, let's say, a lab report, to a scan, to then the doctor's prognosis, to the medical treatment, to the pharmacy, all of that, right? These are again broken in several places. Despite enterprises wanting to push on some of these things, it's broken.
No, it's going to take time, but I'm saying
that's the opportunity. That's the
opportunity. Karuna, I'm coming back to you, right? Maybe I got it wrong. You do a lot of impact investment, if I'm right.
NZR is not we are not an impact fund. What you will see us doing is focus a lot on quality of outcomes, customer outcomes that we provide. So in that way, are we helping the next generation of individuals who are becoming the consuming class of India? Yes.
Okay.
Are we focused on bottom of the pyramid investments? My answer is no.
Okay. No, especially, when you look at investing, what are the areas which you think are prime for disruption, right? Venture funding is mostly about disruption, right? Women's health, is that an area where you see a lot of disruption happening, right? Not just AI, overall, right? So what is the opportunity for an entrepreneur, to get into health space? What should they look at from your vantage point?
So honestly, we are sector specialized. So we invest in healthcare and education. So that way, irrespective of where the trends are, we are continuing to invest in terms of the dollars we put into healthcare. Healthcare specifically, I think at least where we've been focused is that in India, there are a lot of gaps across specialties, whether it be women's health, whether it be aesthetics, whether it be oncology, for platforms to come in and solve for continuity of care, the entire continuum of care. We continue to invest in spaces where we see that there is that broken continuum of care and there is a large revenue pool. Women's health, specific example that you took. There are two large revenue pools in women's health. One is in maternity, the second is in fertility. Parts of that are already captured. If you take those away, are there large revenue pools waiting to be captured in women's health? No. But having said that, even fertility, while there is an Indra and a Nova, are there business models that you can still build and scale in fertility? My answer is yes. Okay. So I think healthcare is still so undersolved for in India that there are multiple business models that still need to be built, and we are excited about backing those. Coming to AI, I think at least where we stand, India to US, AI-led business models solving for largely administrative tasks, and that is anywhere from 30 to 50% of all healthcare spends, depending on which country you are in. That is happening, whether it is scribing, labeling, front office automation, all of that. India to India AI is something that we are waiting and watching how that evolves. And like Rohit said, if we are talking of clinical AI, the evidence that you need to create to prove that this works is going to be significant, and we'd rather focus on AI solving for like triaging than actually being able to predict that a person has this disease. Sure. Rather solve for these 70% of people don't have this disease. And honestly, while we are all talking AI and Gen AI today, healthcare has had algorithms for predicting cancer, for detecting different forms of cancer. I think those startups started coming in about 7-8 years back. And some of them now have been able to complete the validation cycle.
Niramai, for example.
Cure AI, Niramai in India, hundreds of companies in the US. So healthcare has already started working on some form of machine learning assistive intelligence for a long time, and that will continue to happen. The speed of execution might increase now with the computing power, but the problem in healthcare always has been the quality of data and the ability to label that data. That is the limiting factor. Do we have enough good quality data that the machine can learn from? And that needs to be solved for.
Sure. I just add, Venk, one thing for all the entrepreneurs building in health is, I think there is this popular misconception about having to raise venture capital to make something successful, right? One thing which does not fit, at least in today's time and age, and both of you please, tell me if this is wrong, is all of us work with a finite timeline of entry and exit. Most of the healthcare sort of investments or prospects, especially because of the nuances that goes around it, most times they don't fit into this timeline of being able to see that scale, right? You have to be able to do something very different to be able to command that sort of capital interest, to be able to see that this gets put into work, right? So quite often there is this gap in the mind of an entrepreneur to how the venture capitalist actually looks at it, and hence, and I don't know what the Bain guy was smoking to say 80% of that $1 billion.
It's a report. I just read it. Maybe I read the wrong report. I don't know, but
I don't know. Do you believe that's so?
Healthcare report out of which 80%.
no. I did see Bain, so I was impressed. Bain doesn't put out reports just like that, right? I think you can Google and see. But I agree. But see, the biggest challenge for an entrepreneur, any entrepreneur who is in the, I think, is the unit economics, right? And what you said earlier is what you alluded to in terms of, making money from a healthcare startup, right? What is the gestation period, right? Is it 10 years? Is it 12? Our fund size is say 8 plus 2, whatever, right? Are they going to have an exit within that, right? So Naga, coming to you, you are a deep tech investor. Where do you see deep tech and AI and healthcare coming together?
Look, I mean, when you say deep tech, you're using some aspects of deep tech, like whether it's robotics,
Sure.
or easiest use case is radiology, because there's enough, because that's by default well digitized, well documented, assisting doctors in radiology. And in the pharma biotech, there's quite a bit of applications. In fact, in the last SaaS Boomi or AI, we had one vertical session on how AI can impact bio and pharma. And few areas where the entrepreneurs got excited was, one is how can you speed up clinical trials? Because that is inherently, again, very, very digitized, right? Sure. So how can you, because clinical trials are a very, very painful exercise and very, very expensive exercise. How can you compress that? That is one. Second one is, how can you discover molecules faster, right? Because, again, that is AlphaFold and other things. Using that, how can you discover molecules faster? Or, how can you repurpose an existing molecule into something else? Because that can be done using simulations. So there are a lot of things that enterprises, pharma and biotech companies can do using all these technologies that can actually speed up everything quite a bit. And that's, to Rohit's point, it's not touching the patients directly, so it's a lot easier. Because anything that touches the consumer, or in fact, is always hard, and healthcare even harder. It's like autonomous driving, right? It is more efficient than human beings, but one mistake, everything stops in its track. So there are a few things there where you cannot afford to make a mistake. Sure. So when anything that's not born, that is patient-focused, I think that will take time. But there are a lot of things that enterprises can do that can really speed up, including robotic surgery. So there are a whole bunch of, and then another area that is really, really picking up is nano. Very focused, again, this is touching the consumer directly, so this will again go to humongous clinical trial, but targeted medicine, where technology come into play, but this won't be easy sell. So wherever we are seeing, and then the third, fourth area where we are looking at, even from quantum sensing, sensing various things in the human body, but that sensing you can bring in easily, because you're not actually doing, providing a treatment. So anything providing treatment can use technology, will take much longer. Anything that is not directly interfacing with the consumer, whether it's quantum, is robotics, whether it is nano, or whether it is AI, all those high tech is applicable in healthcare, but you have to be very clear in which area you're applying it.
No, the other challenge we have had is we are still not a drug discovery country. We have it. It's always the US and Europe which have created molecules, right? But there are now entrepreneurs who are getting into that field, right? And is it easy? No. Again, you have to get the FDA approval, whatever it is, right? So are you, any of you in the panel, seeing any of those opportunities out there?
So we have an investment in a company called Immune, and they are developing cure for autoimmune skin diseases, atopical treatment for psoriasis, vitiligo, and things like that. And they are in the phase 2 clinical trial. And the good thing I see in India for those kind of drug discovery is you can do it at a very, very minimal cost. You can do frugal innovation.
Absolutely.
So they are in phase 2 clinical trials, and the total amount they have spent is around 30 crores. Total amount. It is less than $4 million. It's unheard of, right? So because they started the company by getting BIRAC grants, and they got to a point where it became, to Roy's point, VC fundable, in the sense you have some visibility saying, this is when I'll finish toxicology, animal trials, then the toxicology, and then phase 1 human clinical trials, and then phase 2 human clinical trials. Post that, we don't have the ability to support the companies. But if you finish phase 2 clinical trials, you can get a larger big brother to come and license your molecule. So I think there is tremendous scope in India to build these molecules.
Because of labor.
Yeah, labor and access to people and everything. And then the good news in health, in bio and pharma and health in general is BIRAC has been very, very good. Right? Many entrepreneurs, they should use BIRAC grants, right? To get to the point, because no VC will invest in the science risk. If VC has to invest, first question I'll ask is there any science risk? You go please figure out how you're going to solve the science risk. We'll take the product risk. Market risk we'll take, but we cannot take the science risk. Right? So we have to be TRL 8, 9 equivalent in technological things. So I think there's a great opportunity, to your point, in the pharma biotech space for India to make progress, and I think we will do quite a bit in that space. That's my guess.
In fact, I'll add to him. So basically, there is a lot of innovation happening on the therapy side. And to his point, BIRAC, BBC all have been great in terms of supporting the initial development. But we've seen a lot of startups come up in the cell and gene therapy space. And some of them have started to see validations and getting to the commercialization stage, whether it be for Duchenne's, DMD, whether it be for cancer, etc. So there's a lot of work happening there as well, which is fairly exciting. Of course, these are rare diseases, so market size, etc. do come into question, but it is an interesting development.
So Rohit, from your vantage point, have you seen good healthcare startups out there where you have thought of investing? You don't have to name the startup, but you're
Oh, plenty. Look,
and where you have put money to.
I have. There's some in the audience also.
Good.
Look, I think, especially when we see, an avenue for disruption, I think startups will lead the way, right? So there are some of them who have actually done pretty well to be able to showcase that sort of incursion into how thinking needs to change.
And monetizing also?
Yes, some of them have actually been able to monetize, make it recurring, and actually with fair degree of retention. It takes a lot of time. So for example, everyone talks about mental health, right? Like you can't come and talk about mental health purely on CAC and LTV. Yes, it's important, but you also have to talk about relapse rate. No one talks about it. They just say, I have these many number of users. Means nothing, right? Because you have to understand what those parameters are. You have to understand what criticality of, like Naga mentioned, the science behind what you're trying to sell, right? If it is just interactive, someone who listen to you and not judge you and things like that, that's fine. But there's no money in some of those things, right? If you're going towards health, and in one large filter, Venk, is always about in health. You are either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. There is a willingness to pay in health. If you're not able to crack that, then the reason for existence becomes very, very minimal, right? So if you're there, you have actually disrupted, if you've been able to kind of forge a pathway that becomes a new standard. We just spoke about few names like Anirma and others who ideally wanted to be on the diagnostic side of things, but had to start from the screening side of things to prove themselves, prove it out that it works, as one example, and it takes so much time, right? So there are a lot of startups who have actually done pretty well, cutting across all of these parameters, survived time, survived COVID, some came out through COVID. So yeah, there's been quite a few.
No, but I think I see a lot of startups in the preventive side,
Sure.
right? Even things like CultFit and all that, they claim themselves to be in the health, right? But I still haven't seen somebody creating a molecule, creating those kind of stuff. I think it's far off because India still is a value-added, value-conscious.
Preventive, yeah, Venk, I think there are larger things to solve for also in a country of this size, right? Like I was just discussing again, by 2030, the number of folks who are actually above 60 is going to be equal or similar to the size of the US population, right? So you can imagine what it would take, right? So do you then start with someone who's 60 today and talk about what they need to do from a health perspective, or wait for someone like me who's mid-40s to reach 60 and then talk about it? It's very different. Yeah. There are sizes available everywhere. Who's the one who's buying the preventive care, right? Is it the 20-something, is it 30-something, is it 40-something? It's very hard to kind of articulate some of these things, and we don't have policy. Other countries have policy which drives this. We don't have policy, which means it's at our discretion, which means it's choice, right? And today it feels like paying tax for anyone who's doing preventive, like wearing all the devices, taking control of your health. It feels a little bit like just paying tax, right? And that, I don't know if there is enough size for it. And you're right. So that has to start as a movement. It has to start as something where it is important. We call it medicine 3.0. It will come. I honestly don't know where the inflection point is, otherwise I would have definitely invested on it. But it will come. In a country as large as ours, it will come.
Okay. So on the policy, there are few areas where the government is, central government is actually fully supportive, and I think Adil can also vouch for that, right? Because there are a lot of policies being set to say how can you use enzymes to replace the chemicals in the biomanufacturing, right? And we have, two startups out coming out of BBC, there's one company there. The other area where they're focusing on is how do you, for health conditions, how do you get rid of sugar in many things? So that there are efforts now to see how proteins can be used, whey proteins can be used to replace sugar in condiments. So you're consuming protein which is sweet. So that I think even at the central government in India, there's a lot of efforts underway to support startups. I think there is a lot of hope, in those aspects, and we have enough people and there are enough good incubators now. In Bangalore, we have two great incubators, one BBC and one in CCAM, and both the CEOs spoke, one spoke, one will speak today. So I think we are blessed to have that kind of an infrastructure, and I think we should be optimistic about what can happen in these areas. In the consumer space, I'm not that deeply involved in the mental health app space. I don't invest in that as much, but I think they're supremely challenging in terms of monetization. So that I don't look at that very closely.
No, I think there was a time period about 2-3 years back where I saw a lot of these diabetes reversal apps, right? Everybody was coming up with a diabetes reversal, right? I don't see that much now, right? Either it failed or it didn't take off or whatever.
No, it goes and comes back. That's the problem.
No, and I think people like Rajiv who done the Ayurvedic kind of thing, we should commend people like him who have stuck to that, Ayurveda, and kudos to him for continuing that journey. Keep it up. So, anything you want to add from what Rohit said in terms of what are the opportunities out there?
Honestly, for us, we think very clearly the way we see it. We are looking for entrepreneurs who are trying to push the quality envelope a little bit. They're trying to redefine the standards on quality of care in the segment that they operate in. In most cases, wherever we're talking of curative care, the market is high, is very large. If you're able to give a value proposition that sticks with the consumer, that's what we believe in. When it comes to mental health, I have said it for 3 years, AstroTalk is solving for mental health in this company. Anyone else coming and telling me therapy mein paise kamayenge, I am not bullish on that, right? Similarly, preventive healthcare. While we all talk about it, I think very few companies have been able to move to monetization. They have largely stuck on building communities and platforms. Yeah. Having said that, there are 5 companies in India today who are doing digital coaches and are above 100 crores in top line. Is that VC investable? Unfortunately, no. But is there science to say mental health, preventive health is catching up in India? I would say yes. When will it become VC investable? Like Rohit, I'm waiting for the right signals. Elder care, another space he touched upon. Extremely excited. Problem lies that today the early monetization signals I see are largely around saying, can you build assisted living facilities, senior step-down nursing homes? Again, very capex intensive, not VC investable, but great business. Anything else around elder care, we are too we are too early in the journey to see monetization. Having said that, Saregama had a product called Caravan, which they launched about 7 years back. In 4 years, they sold about 1,600 crores worth of Carva at a time when there was Alexa, which could have solved for music learning for elders at the same price. So it is about, can you either tap into guilt or aspiration as a emotion and sell products around that.
Sure.
So for us, does the founder come with a unique customer insight which gives us the confidence that he will be able to build in this market is what we look for. Otherwise, on most curative aspects, we are very excited. Cell and gene therapy, I'm super excited about. I think the way we see healthcare today, treatments today will change fundamentally in the next 10 years. How much of it will happen in India, whether I as a VC can be part of it, is a question.
Okay. You know what, in
Frank,
the interest of time, sorry. Go ahead, sorry.
Just some VC English, okay, that I've learned. I'm eager to share. So VCs are guilty of pattern matching. Please don't blame me, I'm new on this side. So one of the things that's especially prevalent in healthcare is trying to fit everything in boxes. And I'm sure all of you know Philip Kotler's 4 Ps and stuff, right? So there's a 5 P in healthcare also. I'll share what those are. First is policy, second is patient, third is provider, fourth is pharma. Which is the fifth one? Any guesses? Payer provider is the same. Physician, most important, right? So this 5 P, if you are able to cut across all of these, like some of my friends are doing, brilliant business to do. If you are only deep in some, you will struggle to kind of convince the others in terms of the use cases. Now what happens is this is such a unique ecosystem that all of them are codependent in some way or the other. So just appeasing to one, you have to kind of prove that their life depends on it. It has to be a must-have and not a nice-to-have, right? And that's the difference in healthcare, right? Which has to kind of appease a lot of these things. So again, no use, but we say English, sorry.
Anyway, great point. Now, I'm just going to open it for questions if people have. We have only 3-4 minutes, but if anybody has questions for the Allied panel, please put your hands up. I don't think anybody is. Oh, there's somebody?
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, it was really insightful, and also, if I go back to the early noon session, right, from Professor Sain. So a lot of it has to do with connecting the post, let's say, genomics from the multi-omics data to not just small molecule, but gene therapy or vaccines and so on. However, in India, for long, we have only depended on the insights or repositories from the West, but we don't even have our own knowledge base, but the samples are being wasted in the sinks. So I think this is the fundamental challenge, and how can VC or angel investors help us, if we come up with solutions in this aspect, because it's hardly been even looked into.
Anybody?
So look, VCs the capital that you get from the VC is the most important thing, right? I mean, they can help you with some other things, but entrepreneurs are the driving forces behind anything. India is where it is for various reasons today, right? I think we need to see how best to take it forward. And then we have to choose our battles. You cannot say, I'll be good in this, I'll be good in that, and everything. So I think it's an evolving industry. I can't specifically tell you how VCs can come in and help. But if it is gene therapy, I've been talking to a couple of companies in CRISPR, for example, right? So there is leap of faith that you have to take, but Rohit said one thing very important early on. So you raise capital, the question becomes, what are you going to deliver for this so that you can raise the next round of capital? So you always have to look one round ahead, right? Because you cannot just look at this round and then say, okay, I need this much money, but if you don't know what you're going to deliver for that, then you are in trouble, right? Because you can't raise the next round. And the next round of capital, Series A and B in healthcare, when you get into these high-tech segments, it's still challenging. And that is true not only in the healthcare domain, but it is very true in the deep tech domain as well. So I think we are, as a VC ecosystem, we are still evolving. It'll take time. We have to give ourselves another 5 to 10 years, in my honest opinion, to kind of reach a point where I think we say, all right, we are getting to the point where we are technologically advanced, right? I think we have to have patience.
Very well. I'll just add to your question on a first principle basis. I'll repeat what another founder friend just told me as a dialogue. He said, India is for scale and rest of the world is for sale, right? Which is true. And why it is so important is because, to your question on why are we not doing any of these things first, right, is because you have to go and get the approvals from an FDA sort of body for it to become usable, right? Because we believe that the sale is there. So you can't wait for systems here. So for example, everybody knows that CDSCO is now the approver, right? Even if you're FDA approved, you have to come and get a CDSCO approval for medtech here. But if you say that, if you go and tell FDA, listen, I have CDSCO approval, can you give me approval? They won't, right? So it is, we can't change this overnight, but the fact is that, so which is why, people have research labs, research divisions sitting there. The capital markets appreciate some of these things, right? In fact, I'm just thinking with the 5P, maybe a 6th P can be added, which is patent, right? If you are able to deliver a strong patent, you can actually go and list in the US with 0 revenue and still become like a great company, right? Obviously, it has its own pitfalls, but that's the sort of enthusiasm that they work with. You cannot replicate that overnight here, right? That's why it will take time to change.
Hi, my name is Navneet. So since the morning, I have seen a couple of panelists talk about the elder care space in particular. And recently, I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but Google in India has rolled out a comprehensive elder care program for all of its employees. Okay, so the reason I know all of this is because I'm also building an elder care space, and we are building a full stack sort of a concierge platform with an initial focus on NRI's parents in India. My question to you, because two of you are VCs, like what actually would take it for it to become interesting for VCs to look at this space more seriously? Because I know some players have gotten maybe initial bit of funding here and there, but I don't see that really becoming that mainstream. While I've seen some VCs start to talk about it and write about it on LinkedIn and stuff, but what is that maybe inflection point? Like what is that conditions which needs to be there in place for it to become interesting for VCs also?
No, I just want to take a crack at it before I pass it on to the panelists. But I think, the scale, I think, would be the problem, right? Yeah. The scale is, I think, the biggest problem for any VC, because for them to invest, they want to see the scale going up, right? So that is a problem. Anyway, maybe one of you can.
Look, the same metrics, man. CAC, retention, LTV, it is the same thing. If you're able to show that from the time of acquisition, you can build something which is sustainable. If you believe this is a group which can give you repeat business, inherently it has to. What are those critical points, right? And today, like Anna mentioned, a lot of it is offline. A lot of it is building physical centers because they're captive. You can actually kind of do a lot more sort of coherent programs with them. If they're scattered, it's very different on who's going to be able to kind of, come up and take those actions. Like you just mentioned, NRI parents, are you talking to the kid or are you talking to the parent? Right? So, and kids will never get what the parents want. That's the problem, right? And you will see it at scale. Today, and look, I was telling someone outside also that if you're building something in Bangalore has a very high acceptability rate for everything, from dosas of various kinds to healthcare of various kinds, right? But that's not reality, right? There's a lot of things which changes. So which means if you're selling to the kid who's finally paying the bill, are you going to be talking to them or are you going to be talking to the parent, right? If that equation was simple, then, they would have anyway solved for it themselves, right? So it's complicated like that. So VCs, like Naga also mentioned, don't like this, well, let's figure it out sort of thing, right? It has to be proven to a certain extent and then that will come in.
In fact, I'll add, VCs have been seriously looking at elder care for the last 2 years, honestly. Where are we seeing startups? Either it's home automation where you help fall detection, etc. The supply of elder-focused homes is we're supposed to add another 10 lakh homes in the next 4 to 5 years, and this is across developers. So the market is too small for any home automation that you're doing there. Okay, then there is communities, and communities have seen a lot of traction. There are platforms which have seen like 4-5 lakh elders on the platforms. There's no monetization. Then comes the whole nursing services and health monitoring, etc., etc. That has been something that has been very difficult to organize, and it is a cost plus business model that works there. So I think while the numbers are on the side of elder care in terms of TAM, what we are all looking for, monetization, CAC to LTV making sense. And I think there we've not been able to build confidence yet.
Anyway, guys, thank you. And in the interest of time,
One question.
Naga?